come across tons of people who have plenty of money, but they're miserable. They don't have life. And, I think prosperity is all inclusive of all the things that we desire in life. It's the joy, it's the happiness, it's, that feeling of success. And we can be prosperous with little money or a lot of money. It all depends upon the how we perceive it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Very, very, very excited for this week's guest, Mr. Steve Cook. Steve, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, Phil. Thank you.
Well, for our listeners, who is Steve Cook? Author, entrepreneur, real estate investor, author, wrote a book called Lifeonaire several years ago. This is a really neat just discussion for me, an interview for me to get to have, because I look back and I read this book in July of 2018. I have it earmarked and marked up, and I was just going back through and reading it again and looking through my notes. And it's always interesting to, you're shaped by the people you hang out with, the books you read, kind of your education, and to go back 6 years and see like, where was I then and kind of how did different books, including this one, influence me was really cool. And Steve, I want to start, we'll definitely talk about the book because there's just so many good concepts that investors, entrepreneurs, anyone, quite frankly, employees, whatever it is, need to hear. I think it's just fantastic. But before we get into the book, just tell me, your backstory and what led to the book, and why the book and what are you up to today? Just tell us more about yourself.
Sure. Well, I was an entrepreneur all my life. I mean, coming out of high school, I wanted to be in business for myself and pursued all different kinds of things, failed at all different kinds of things. I had restaurants at a young age. I failed with my second restaurant when I was 27 years old. And I got to tell you, when I bought that restaurant, I wholeheartedly believed I was on my way to just living the good life and being wealthy and successful. And I remember the day I got it, I just thought life was going to be awesome. And I found out shortly after buying it that I didn't buy an investment and I didn't buy something that was going to set me free, but I bought two jobs and I was lucky if I could get paid for one. And it was just a very difficult time, but lots of lessons learned. But I came out of that failed restaurant business and just deep in debt. I didn't have any income, didn't know how I was going to pay my bills. My credit was completely shot. And the first thing I did was I went out and I got a job working as an assistant manager at another restaurant, a big chain. But I did not like working for somebody else. At first, it was nice getting a paycheck because I wasn't paying myself, but they were paying me. So that felt good for a little bit. But deep down inside, I had this nagging feel and I needed to go off on my own again. And I was searching and trying to figure out what my next step was going to be. And coming from the position that I was in, it just seemed really difficult. But real estate investing was something I always wanted. And in fact, it was creative real estate techniques that I used to buy my restaurants. And so I finally just went back and said, well, the problem was I bought a business, not real estate. So I need to go ahead and get back into just doing it and pursuing real estate. So I started looking into real estate, and again, I thought, how in the world am I going to do this? I'm broke. I don't have a job. My credit is shot. I've got nothing, going for me in that area. But I believed that if others could do it, so could I. And I decided to go ahead and just continuously research it and try to dive in. And I discovered wholesale flipping. And that was where I cut my teeth. It actually took me about 8 months to get my first deal. But once I got my first deal, a light bulb went off and I got it. And first 2 years in the business, I flipped 105 houses. After that, people started taking note, who is this guy? And people started coming in from all around the country, wanted to spend the day with me, pick my brain, see what it was I was doing. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would write a book or stand in front of a room teaching people how to do this. But the first book that I wrote was called Wholesaling for Quick Cash. And the intent behind that was to try to free up my time. I was spending so much time helping people. I thought if I put it all into one place, that would free my time up. And it did the exact opposite. The book just took off, started selling like crazy. The demand for my services and things just started growing more and more. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved helping people. I loved helping people become successful. Real estate investing has treated me really, really well. But there was one thing that I started seeing is that the more I started teaching people, I had some students who became very successful. And then I started seeing that their marriages were becoming dysfunctional. Their families were dysfunctional. There was a strain and a stress that was taking place because they were putting so much emphasis on succeeding in business that they were failing in the areas that were more important. And that was what really led me down a different path. And, eventually Lifeonaire became the thing that I was passionate about and wanted to start helping people to not only be successful in business, but to be successful in life as well. And so we do both today, focus on both of them.
And I want to come back. All right, we'll talk a lot about Lifeonaire, but I want to talk a couple of things that stood out. So first of all, I think for the real estate investors, wholesaling, I have not done wholesaling personally, so I don't know this, but just from observing a lot of other people, wholesaling can be a grind, can be a lot of work. But if you learn it and you can do wholesaling well, I think it's like the major key there. I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, is being really good at sales and marketing up front to find deals and locate and identify deals, and then maybe be creative in getting them done. But just if you get really good at sales and marketing and how to find deals, which wholesaling I think builds that skill set, that can cascade, I think, into a lot of other areas of real estate.
Absolutely. So, because I wrote the course Wholesaling for Quick Cash, people would ask me all the time, where should I get started as a real estate investor? And my response was always, well, it depends. And most people thought that I was immediately going to say wholesaling. And unfortunately, within the industry, they would tell many people, oh, this is where everybody should get started. And I don't agree. It really boils down to what your goals are, what your strengths are, what your skill sets are. And as a coach, that is one of the things I'm very particular about is I'll sit down with a client and I help them after I get to know them and get to know what their goals are, what their strengths are. Hey, what's your credit like? How much cash do you have? Um, then we develop a plan that works for them. And there's just so many different ways you can go about real estate.
Yep.
But like you said, wholesaling, that was all I could do at the time. I had nothing to contribute but time. And I didn't have any expertise, no experience, and didn't have money or credit or anything to bring to the table. So I had to just really grind it out and put the time into going out there and finding good deals. And that was the perfect place for me to start. I could make money quickly, and I needed money quickly.
Yep.
I didn't know how I was going to eat this month if I didn't do a deal, when I first got started.
And we'll talk about the different phases of just kind of financial freedom and the steps that you have there. The other thing that stood out is when you were talking about wholesaling, this isn't a comment about wholesaling, but just anything, is it took 8 months to buy the first deal. But then when you take action, like I'm sure you were educating yourself, you were studying, you were maybe talking to other people, but when you take action, it just clicks. And it clicked and it's like, okay, this makes sense to me. I now have the confidence. I know I can do it. 2 years, the next 2 years, 100 houses, which is, I don't know, a lot of 28 houses per month on average after not doing a single house for 8 months. So just the confidence, and when it just clicked when you bought that first one, it seems like.
Yeah, there was a light bulb moment. It was just an aha. And I'll tell you, for me, what it really was two things that came out of that first deal. One, I understood what a motivated seller was. Until you really experience that, I mean, we could talk about it in theory, but until you have somebody begging you to take their house from them, and they don't care how much money they're going to get from it, it just doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
And the other thing, being a guy who was broke, uh, the thought of somebody putting money up, or the idea that there were people who actually had a lot of cash in their accounts to pull these deals off, just was hard to comprehend. But the moment I got that first deal under contract, I immediately had somebody willing to write me a check to pay cash for the house. I had another person who wanted to partner with me, and he'd put up all of the money. And I had another person who actually loaned me the money, and I gave him no good reason to lend me the money because I'll just share briefly. My conversation with him went like this. I said, I understand that you lend money on real estate. And he said, well, I do. And I said, well, I have a deal that's supposed to close tomorrow. And I was wondering if you would consider lending me the money. And he said, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. How much experience do you have? How many deals have you done? I said, well, this is my first one. He said, what do you do for a living? I said, this. He said, how much money do you have to put into the deal? I said, none. He said, how's your credit? I said, it's not very good. And but I told him, the address of the property, and I heard him sort of typing in the background. And after he asked me the questions, he said, "Who's the title company?" I told him who the title company was, and he said, "I'll call you back in 10 minutes." And he called me back, and he said, "I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'll lend you the money to do the deal. I will give you your closing costs, and I expect you to do well. The money will be there tomorrow." And I didn't know why he did it either. And it took me some time in business to realize the reason why he loaned me the money. And I had a great deal. His worst case scenario was that I paid him on time, and I did as we agreed. His best case
Oh
scenario
yeah.
was that I failed, and he took the property back and made the money that I should have made. So it
Right.
was a no-lose situation for him.
Yep.
And that was part of the light bulb when I realized that when you have a good deal, the money is easy. I
Yeah.
had multiple people wanting to put money up for that deal.
Yeah, interestingly, there's people you talked about like clarifying your vision and goals in your specific situation. For someone with a lot of money, keep in mind there's people that need that money and they have good deals. And your best case scenario is if they foreclose on it. Not that you want that, but from a financial perspective only, you can do really well if you have money but not time. On the other hand, if you have time but not money to find these deals, figure out how to find the money for the, sorry, if you have the time to find the deals, but you don't have the money, you'll figure that out if you find the right deal. So just no matter where you are, there's opportunities to get into real estate. Just kind of understand your own situation and what opportunities are out there and educate yourself on that stuff. So I want to shift a little bit more to now Lifeonaire. So just to start, what is a Lifeonaire?
In its simplest term, it's just somebody who lives and experiences an abundant life. Like the word millionaire or billionaire, somebody who has a lot of money. The Lifeonaire is somebody who experiences the abundance of that life offers.
And you talk about, Lifeonaire, but then you have a definition, and I think we all have a perception of prosperity. I want to talk about the word prosperity because you talk about that a lot in your book and what prosperity is. And I think society, you talk about this, I'll let you explain it, but society and maybe we have default understanding or what we think that is, but what does prosperity mean to you?
So, for many people, they immediately equate it to money. And I've on my years of coaching, I've come across tons of people who have plenty of money, but they're miserable. They don't have life. And I think prosperity is all inclusive of all the things that we desire in life. It's the joy, it's the happiness, it's that feeling of success. And we can be prosperous with little money or a lot of money. It all depends upon the how we perceive it. And again, I have people who I coach who have tens of millions of dollars in net worth who are new to me, and they come on in, and they're miserable with life, think that they need more. And that the process that we take them through is just helping them to realize what is it that you hope to get by having more money, and when they realize, well, one day when I have enough money, I can have great relationships and I can enjoy my time with my spouse and I can spend time with my family. And I say, well, you can do all of that right now.
Right.
you and you didn't even need the money that you currently have to be able to do that. But
Right.
real joy and prosperity is a whole lot simpler than what you think. And we can have it. It's right across the hall.
Right. And one thing that you said in the book is if you think money's going to solve the problem only, look at your history. And if you've made money in the past, like why hasn't it solved the problem already? Right. Just look back at your own specific story and learn from that.
Yep. My own personal experience, when I was first getting started there and doing those wholesale deals, I just thought if I could just get $10,000 in the bank, which would have been more money than I ever had at that time, I would never worry about anything again. And I got to 10,000 and then it was like, well, if I could just get to 20, I'll never worry about. And then if I could just get to 50 and that number just kept climbing. And one day I said if I could just get to a half a million, and I opened up a bank statement and I had $557,000 cash in the bank. And my first thought was if I could just get to a million. And I caught myself that time and I said, when is it going to stop? And there's something wrong. I keep on thinking that I need to get to that next level. And there's so many people who that's the way that they operate. And I get it because I was there. And believing that if I just had more, things would finally get better. And fortunately for me, all that stuff happened over a course of a few-year period. And I thought it was only 3 years ago that you believed if you could just get $10,000, life would be awesome. And now you got over half a million, and you still think you need more.
Right. Right. The goalpost just can keep moving if you're not specific about what you if you're not specific about what you really want, which is a vision. I want to come back to that because you talk about the different steps and stages and phases of money and freedom and prosperity. But you also talk about choices, and the choices we make either give us life or take it away. Explain that, and like what are some examples of those choices on both sides of that fence?
So most of the time, everyone is making decisions that they believe are going to be the best decisions and it's going to get them what they want. I find that almost everyone makes decisions based off of what's going to get them ahead financially. And they're not paying attention to what it is that's going to get them what they want in life. And that's just the way that we've been conditioned. I talk about the board game life. It's a game that we play as a child, or as adults, we play it, and we play it with kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you really pay attention to that game and the object of the game, we start out first and foremost having to make a decision as to whether or not we're going to go to college or if we're going to go and get a job right away. And the reason why we would decide to go to college is because we could get a job making more money. And if we want to win the game of life, it's all about making the most money. Whoever, as we play that game, whoever has the most money at the end of the game is the winner of the game. And we're conditioning ourselves as we play that game and conditioning our kids that the winner of the game of life is the person who makes the most money. And I challenge people, well, what if the winner of the game of life was the person who had the best life experiences? Would you play the game differently? Would you make different choices? And or what if the winner of the game is the person who brought the most glory to God? Would you live your life differently? Would you make different choices? And so the choices that we make are guided by what it is that we're moving toward. What is, and you were going to bring up vision, the vision that we have for our lives. And outside of having a vision, we live what the world around us tells us to do. And, we come out of school, we live in a society and a culture that says, go out and make the most money you can because then life is going to be good. And so most everyone, the choices that they make are going to be geared toward what's going to get me ahead financially. And they give little consideration to what the cost of that might be in
Yeah.
regards to life.
So I want to go there. So vision. So why a life vision and how do you create one? But my opinion of this is, and you were starting to say this, I think, but so often, first of all, so many people don't spend any time on creating a vision. And because of that, if there is a vision, it's on default. It's just whatever happens to them, and it's based on what they see from other people but they probably don't dig in. And you talk about this in the book. They don't dig into like whose life, like who do you want to be like? Whose life do you want to quote copy? Or, you maybe don't use that word, but it's just a lot of times the big thing is it's on default. It's by accident. And
Mhm.
you talk, there's different stages and phases I talked about. Number one, you say, is creating a life vision. How do I do that?
So that is by far the most important part. And apart from that, most people are just going to live life aimlessly by default, like you said. And that default is often going to be living the life that your parents expect you to live, or your siblings, or even trying to impress college buddies or things along those lines, and you don't ever give consideration to it. I also want to comment on another thing that you said, that most people don't do it, and I would say that the majority of people spend more time planning a party or a weekend getaway than they do planning their life and taking the time to really decide what is it that they want their lives to look like. Now, when I do speak to real estate investor groups, I could be in a room where there's 100 people, and if I were to poll every single person in that room as to whether or not they have a life vision, there might be one person in the room that has a life vision. If I bring that up to a group of 100 people, they all think they're the one person, but they're not. What most of them have is what they desire for their balance sheet to look like, or how much passive income they want. They're focused on the finances. They're not focused on what their life would look like if they achieved those goals, or if they had all the money in the world, what would I do? What would my life look like? They really can't answer that question, so they're living life by default. And so with Lifeonaire, we've focused on really taking people and investing the time and the energy into developing a life vision. And we leave money out of it altogether. We just focus on, prioritizing things, whether it's our spiritual life, our family lives, relationships and marriage, hobbies, our health. We have different elements of what is it that you actually want your life to look like, and how do you want to spend your days, and we'll figure the money part of it out later. And so at Lifeonaire, what we do is we focus on life first, and then we build a business to serve that lifestyle. We make business fit into life, whereas most people build a business in hopes of becoming successful, and then they try to fit life into what's left, if there's anything left. They're usually so stretched that they don't get to do life, and they're so busy working and trying to make money. And we take the exact opposite approach. We start with life, and then we design a business to serve that lifestyle that you desire to live. And it's a unique thing to many, something that they've never really heard of or contemplated before. Most people find that in order to live the life that they want to live, they can't work more than 20 to 25 hours a week. And they have a hard time comprehending, how do I make a living working only 20 to 25 hours a week? And we say, well, that's why you have to design your business to be as profitable as it can possibly be in that 20 hours. And that's where we put our focus, is in designing the business to give you the life that you want to live.
And I want to make sure we emphasize designing the life and then the business around that, because you do talk about stages of like how money and how financials support that life. And you have some different steps that we'll go through here in a minute if we could. But so you're saying for the vision, like if I have a vision from a faith perspective, I need to write down that specific vision. And then if I have a vision from a marriage perspective, and then like with my kids, and then, friends or other relationships, my health, whatever it might be, whatever my priorities are, is it one life vision, or is it like, do I create a vision for all of those different elements that you and I both kind of talked about?
There isn't a right or a wrong way, and it's usually whatever works for people. But take that into consideration. Just writing one life vision, where it's all combined into one. The next step that we would have you do, and this is where the people get the real aha moment, is you take that vision, and then we have you start filling out your day planner as if you were living that life. I'm going to go on a date with my wife every Thursday night, and I'm going to be there for my kids games. I'm going to go work out in the gym at 9 a.m. every morning. And you start to put all of this stuff on your calendar and you put it on there first, you realize that you can't possibly live the life that you desire to live if you keep working the way that you're working. There's just not enough hours in the day. And so it becomes imperative at that point, and this is when people realize I have to make a change. This is the life that I want, and this is the person who I want to be. And if I'm going to be that person, my business has to look different than it looks today.
Yeah.
And or I get to design a new business that actually fits what it is, that we want to do. And so, um, to go back and answer your question, once people get good at that, then there's other things. We today, my wife and I, we put together another little workbook for people, and it's to develop a marriage vision. And this is specifically for couples to come up with their own playbook for, how do we do marriage, and talking about finances and talking about how do we parent our kids, and are we going to be, a stay-at-home mom, or are we going to have two jobs, and everything from sex to communication, but to really have a vision for what that looks like, because so many couples don't talk about those things. What are our family traditions going to be? Let's not argue about what are we going to do on Christmas? Your family did it this way and my family did it that way. But taking the time to come together and say, well, this is our family. How are we going to do it?
Yeah.
And to get on the same page.
Well,
One of my
I'll say just on that topic, for the first time 2 years ago, December of, I guess, 22, and then again last year in November, we went on a trip specifically to kind of build out like a 3-year vision of what we wanted different areas of our life to look like: marriage, kids, health, all those things. And just to do that for us, to do that at home, we have 5 little ones at home. So just to be able to do that and focus on it for more than a minute or two at a time is not the easiest. So getting away, maybe, I mean, one of your visions is do that every year or whatever it might be, and you might have a different approach. But it was really impactful, because then throughout the year, when we're doing different things, including even if business is a part of that vision, we're aligned on that. We've talked about it and we're supportive of each other versus resisting or fighting each other a lot of times. So what you just said there about the marriage vision, I think is a really important aspect of how all this works together.
That's awesome. And on the parenting side of it, we've been emphasizing even a parenting vision more often. And but I agree with you. You get away for a few days to do this because it's so hard to do in the midst of day-to-day life. And when day-to-day life is hard, the thought and even trying to have a vision and
Yeah,
dream of what life could look like, you're like, that'll never happen. Why are we doing this?
right.
And but you get away, you remove yourself from your day-to-day, and you invest the time into it. Parenting visions have to be updated regularly. I've got 5 children too, 6 grandkids already, but still have three of my boys at home, and they keep me really busy. But it constantly changes. We have to talk about, what are the rules going to be around technology? What are the rules going to be around dating? And when they're young, that's not important to you just yet. But okay, how do we handle this? And now they want to play sports, and this one wants to go to this youth group, and to pull away and to just continuously come back and revisit this so that my wife and I can be on the same page is really important.
Yeah. I wanna, I keep saying I'll jump to there's just so much here, but you talk about building your life vision and then designing the business around that. On the other hand, in the book, the beginning of the book is an entrepreneur that is, I would say, struggling in other areas of life. Things are just, as you said, kind of a mess for this individual. And it's a great story. And it's just an easy read with a lot of great points to it. But my point of that is, if not if not clear on what you want out of business and entrepreneurship can end up being really stressful and really challenging, and maybe worse than employment for some people if you don't do it the right way. So is entrepreneurship, is real estate the way to go? Like, you feel strongly about that, or do I need to be an employee? Tell me more about that.
Well, I do not necessarily agree that everybody should be a real estate investor nor an employee. In fact, at my real estate events, if I could talk people out of real estate and if they were doing it for all the wrong reasons, money, if they were doing it just for the money, I'd say, go do something you want to do. And that you can make money all different kinds of ways. And so I'm not suggesting that people either be a real estate investor or an employee, but it's going to be different for each and every person and just in who they are. And hopefully through the vision process, they get to know themselves. Some people don't even know who they are until they go through this process. We've had people who just really break down crying because they've been living somebody else's life all their lives, and to discover that there's so much more to me and there's so much more I want to do. And so, I've been, I had one guy who was coaching, and I still coach him today. His passion was to be a musician, and the day that he sat down with his future in-laws, their question to him was, well, if you're going to be a musician, how are you going to take care of my daughter? And they basically said, I suggest you do something different. And he became a dentist and he hates it. And, but that one time, somebody else wrote his vision for him and guided him. And he so badly wants to get out of that because it was just not something he was passionate about. But little events like that in life can really lead us down a path of becoming who we don't want to be. And so, yeah, the vision is really powerful in helping people to discover, am I supposed to be a real estate investor? Am I supposed to go into business? Am I supposed to go into ministry? Do I just get a job? It's wide open. And my goal is to really help people to find fulfillment wherever it is they land.
I didn't think about creating a vision and the self-awareness that creating the process of creating a vision can build. And it's just, the other thing is, it's amazing how much other people and what we think other people perceive or tell us dictates often how we actually live, what we actually do. So I really like that. So the first step is vision, but then there's also, so finance. So we've designed this, we have a plan, we've time blocked, we put the most important things into our calendar. So now we have to figure out, though, that money is an element of this, right? You do talk about money in the book, and I think in your courses and with your clients. So, the other, you make ends meet, excess cash. There's kind of a process to build out how to support this vision. So tell me more about that process.
So, when people do develop their life vision, I highly encourage to put in that vision to live a simple life. If you desire to live an extravagant life and to, live this full lifestyle, immediately when you really can't afford it yet, you make things complicated. You have to work more. And so the stage one is developing your vision. Stage two is meeting your needs. And if you live a very complicated life, you have to work a lot more just to meet your needs. There's more money you need to make, and so you're putting a lot more pressure on yourself. Where if you choose to live simply for a while, you can get through stage two much easier. And so we find that many people, when they're young and they get married, they want to live the equivalent lifestyle that their parents live, who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And they want the big house or bigger house than what their parents own. They want nicer cars than what their parents have. They want to go on better vacations, and they're financing it all. They're going deep into debt to make all of that happen and to experience that today. And the choices that they're making is affecting what they can do moving forward, because now they have to work so much to maintain that lifestyle. It affects couples because now couples aren't spending the time with each other that they did when they dated. They have to work so much. They've got the pressure and the stress of making money. They don't realize how much debt really controls them when they start trying to finance that lifestyle at a point when they're not ready for it yet. They can't afford it. And so we just highly recommend living simply, because they still get all the stuff and the joy that they desire to get out of life, that the houses and the cars and all that doesn't really give them the joy. It just that they trade their lives, they trade their futures away for that, especially when they go into debt for it.
Yep. So we build a vision, we meet our needs, and one of the keys just to being able to meet our needs is just living just either start out living simply, or if you're living complexly or just a lot of debt, to simplify things, I think would be the other way to look at it. And then step 3 is um, trying to figure out ways to make excess cash that you can ultimately leads to step 4, right?
Yep. So that excess cash, once you're living within your means and you're able to get by consistently, whether you're generating excess cash just by having extras left over, or you start doing a side hustle or something else that will generate excess for you, you can do whatever you want to do with that money. You can you can give it away, you can go ahead and splurge, you can spend it on things, but that is the time that I highly recommend that people go ahead and just invest that into income producing assets, free and clear income producing assets that begin to set you free. When you are in that stage 4 of investing into income producing assets, it's no mystery. That's the passive income that starts to free you from having to work so much. You get to work less. And that's the income that you really want to build your lifestyle with. If you want to start having nicer things, let your assets pay for it instead of you trading, hours for dollars so that you can live in a nicer house. Let your assets be the thing that pays for it. And it happens pretty quickly. When people sit here and they take this process seriously, if they're living simply and they're living on I don't want to say cheap or frugal because that sometimes sends the wrong impression. Um, but just living very wisely so that you do have excess. It's amazing at just what the first things that you can put into place that might make you $500 a month or $1,000 a month, of how much of a difference that can make with your current lifestyle when money that you're not working for just comes in every single month. And you now compound on that, and before long you have $3,000 or $4,000 a month coming in, and it just shows up in your mailbox, or in your bank account, and you didn't have to go to work for it. You can start to do a lot more things in life, and you just, if you're wise and you just keep reinvesting that for a few years, you can quickly set yourself free. And
Yep.
so when we have people who come into the organization and their needs are really small, they only need 50 or $60,000 a year. It's amazing at how quickly they can get to a point where they're 100% free and living wherever they want to live, traveling. When somebody comes on in and they need $250,000 a year to get by and support their lifestyle, it takes longer, and there's more that they have to do to get there. It's not that it's impossible,
You
but
know, I think it would be like, I wonder how many people have, let's say people were 35, 40, 45, and they're living simply. So they don't need a lot of cash flow to live off of. And they also are invested. They might have a pretty decent balance sheet, but they're not cash flowing off that equity. They're just they're only building the equity. And I think, just to go on a tangent, that real estate or businesses that are set up structured properly, but cash flowing assets. So you're getting the cash flow element of it and you're growing your equity over time. You can still grow equity outside of the stock market with real estate in addition to cash flowing. And there's probably so many people, if they're sitting on 500,000, $1 million and can live off of 60, 80K, you're basically there if you place that assets in a different way. They're not. So there's so many people I think are planning on working for 10, 20, 30, 40 more years when they really don't need to, if they don't want to, or they can invest that wisely and go pursue something they're more passionate about. So rant over for me, but we're speaking the same language here. There's
you
so many
hit the
people that
nail
are
on the head.
there. There's so many people that are there. I'm not saying everybody is, but I think there's so many people that could be there if they really understood how all this works.
I coach many people when they first come into the organization. They've been doing this for years, and I say, "You're there. You've arrived." And they just look at me like, "You're kidding. I thought I had 20 more years." I'm like, "No, we just need to reposition your assets." And, so, part of my vision is that I don't want to just invest in things that only appreciate. I only want to invest in things that provide a monthly cash flow. And because that cash flow is what sets me free. A stock that just continues to go up in value doesn't set me free.
Right.
And so yeah, you're 100%. I love what you just said there because that I'm passionate about that.
Love it. You referenced briefly, and I wanted to ask you about it. I had underlined in the book, but just what are your thoughts on giving and when should you start giving? And like, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I wholeheartedly believe in giving right now, giving today and giving from what you have. I think too often people are waiting until someday when they have more to give. And, giving is a discipline from a couple of perspectives. Number one, if you can't give out of little, you're not going to be able to give out of much. It is a discipline. And if you're holding on so tight, but I think when we take the topic of tithing, it's one of the hardest things for a pastor to talk about in the church. But I think that tithing was a gift from God. It's not just giving, and it's not meant to hurt us. It's meant to help us. And I gave my heart to Jesus later in life. And the day that I decided that I was going to be a committed tither and give 10% of everything that I made, it changed everything for me. And one of the big areas where it changed things was it helped me to make decisions because it was a real commitment. I'm giving my first 10%. And when the temptation came to, buy a car or to buy something and perhaps go and do something with payments, it's like, well, if I stopped tithing, I could afford that car. But then it was my commitment was a real commitment. I said, well, no, I can't do that. My commitment is to give the first 10%. And it sort of forced me to live within my means. And that's when I began to prosper. When I learned to live on less is when it was the day that prosperity really, from a financial perspective, really kicked in for me.
And there's a lot of different verses in the Bible that says just the more you give, the more you shall receive too. So everything you just said there, absolutely wonderful. Uh, another thing that I think about, and I don't know how, I'm curious your thought process on this for you personally. To whom much is given, much is required. So this stuff. You're skilled at communicating this, at teaching this, but you're also trying to live it. So if so, you're thinking about, you have 3 kids that are still at home, 5 kids, you got grandkids. So you're designing your schedule around being with your family, your marriage. Those things are all of priority. But at the same time, you have these unique skill sets where you can have a big impact and help a lot of people do more of that. So how do you balance those two things personally?
So, I mean, the interesting thing is that I have really decided to just work with a smaller group of people. And I'll just back up a little. When I decided to start doing a mastermind and coaching group, that was back in 2007 was when I initially launched it. So I've been doing masterminds for longer than they've been cool. But my initial take was I wanted to have a significant impact in the lives of a few people rather than just skimming the surface with the masses. And I was figuring out what's the best way for me to do that. What model does this need to look like? And I just landed with Jesus and his disciples. Jesus spent years with 12 guys who, because of the time that he spent with them, my life has changed today. There's billions of people through the model of journeying through life with a small group of people and making a significant impact rather than trying to do it with the masses. So that's been the model that I've been following. I've been coaching just small groups of people who I've been spending many, many years with, journeying through life with them and impacting them the best that I can, and then trying to multiply through them, creating other people who will do the same thing, equipping them to go out and do the same, which is exactly the way Jesus was doing it. I've written the book to try to share the principles with people. Lifeonaire does do some workshops to help people with developing their vision, allow them to come out of their day to day. But I've been feeling tugged to really get out there and share the message with more people. And there was a day when I was much more out there in the world of real estate investing and things like that, where I was very, very well known. But we're going to leverage social media today to take these concepts and really start sharing them more and just putting it out there. And it's just going to be my way of giving back. starting up a new website and forum where I'm providing free coaching for people, no strings attached whatsoever. Just it's my desire to give back. We've been blessed, and the thing that I would love to see is people holistically successful, not just making a lot of money, but making money, and men being great dads and great husbands, and women being great mothers and great wives, and giving them the tools and everything that they need to do that, and to then go out there and equip other people to do the same.
Steve, this is awesome. I just go back to, I want to thank you first for writing the book, because that's, again, I said at the beginning of the episode, but 2018, I read it, and then just reflecting on it again and going through my notes and what was just, I could see how it helped shape and form me over the years. So I appreciate it. And honestly, I'm so appreciative of you coming on the podcast as well and giving your time. You clearly prioritize your time for your mastermind group, what you're doing for your family, of course, for your marriage. So just coming on here and the impact you had on me again 6 years later, and then also the impact you'll have on our listeners. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I want to ask you, I guess, is there anywhere else that people, did you anywhere else you would want to point people, or anything really specific? By the way, free coaching, like, go check that out. If, for our listeners, you want to take advantage of that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. But is there anywhere else or anywhere specific you want to direct people?
I would just say that stevecook.com, that's where the free coaching will take place. And then from there, anything else that they want to know, YouTube is going to be Lifeonaire Steve, and Facebook, I think, is Lifeonaire Steve. I'm not so much of a social media guy. I have to have people help me with that stuff, but
I can relate.
yeah, they're I'm doing everything I can to put the best content that we can possibly put out there, and we're just really launching all of that right now, and it'll be coming online in the next few weeks and next couple of months. I think we're going to start seeing quite a bit of stuff coming out there for the public.
Absolutely fantastic, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on. Just so much. Get the book, first of all. Make sure to read the book. Find Steve at his website, stevecook.com. And, maybe in a year, 2 years, 6 years from now, you'll look back at your notes from the book and you'll say, man, that had an impact on me. So again, thank you for everything, Steve. Very much appreciate it. For the Muller Real Estate and Business Podcast, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Muller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Muller Real Estate, visit our website at www.mullerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.